And so it is not really possible, in my experience, to so radically change your cognitive grammar from the language you use to the influence of Christianity, all the things that make us who we are, even though we're not aware of it, to suddenly be like, no, now I'm running Shipibo Shamanism 2.0, and I see the world through that lens. It doesn't work in my experience. And so what a lot of people are talking about in the kind of, the future of the ceremonial space is, okay, well, what does it look like to have our own ceremonies in different parts of the world, to have our own rituals, to not borrow them from somebody else, kind of steal them from somebody else, arguably. So I'm curious about that as well. And you run retreats yourself, getting people into deep states of flow. So you know that there are ways to create that. I think you've termed it communitas, that deep sense of belonging and connection. So do you think there is some hope for us developing our own ceremonial approaches to psychedelics in the West that don't rely on going, ooh, that looks nice, I'll take your worldview, please?
Yeah, 100%. I mean, literally, and this is also another realm that's outside the medical pharma model, but something, and ways that this may work and persist yet, right? Which is effectively the virtualization of things, right? I think Peter Diamandis, Ray Kurzweil, those guys, it feels somewhat dated right now because it's sort of back in the heady days of Silicon Valley optimism. But that idea of like, hey, my phone ate my TomTom GPS, ate my address book, ate my camera, ate my iPod, it ate all these things. And now it's just zeros and ones in this singular device, right? And so in a similar way, we're seeing the virtualization of the psychedelic initiatory experience, right? So even completely randomly, I mean, this is just people coming up to me and telling me, so this is not an exhaustive survey, but I think, we've been tracking at least a couple of dozen smart tech startups that sprang from people reading Stealing Fire. You're like, whoa, that's crazy. And all of them are technological, like Trip and immersive VR, Dave Rabin's Apollo Neuroband, like all kinds of things where people are like, wait a second, now because of the psychedelic experience and because of the reliability of precipitating a certain known interiority on demand, kind of Oliver Sacks 101, right? Drugs are a shortcut. They promise transcendence on demand. Well, they also promise measurement in easy bite-sized chunks, right? So we have kind of cracked the code on what are the mechanisms of action underneath the numinous experience, right? And as a result, we can now instantiate that across technology, psychology, pharmacology, right? Biology, measure, all the different things. So I mean, it's a cliche, right? I mean, Leary was trumpeting this back in the early 90s that the internet is kind of the new psychedelics, et cetera. But it's a continued progression. And we really are having lots of different ways in. And so when it really comes down to it, and I mean, I write this in the book, but it's kind of crazy. Like I don't think it's ever been laid out this way. But like, here's the recipe for all death, rebirth, initiatory practices across time and space that are the seedbed of human civilization, consciousness, culture, art, philosophy, and religion and technology. You're like, okay, so super juice, dopamine, endorphins, nitric oxide in your body, boost vagal nerve tone and endocannabinoid tone, shift your neuroelectric state out of beta down into alpha, theta, potentially dipping down into delta with the occasional burst of gamma, do a global system reset of your cranial nerves via a pattern interrupt at your brainstem level, which you can do via electrical stimulation, nitrous oxide, ketamine, 5-MeO DMT, or anything else, which creates pan-hemispheric delta wave states. If you've seen radar plots of the recent 5-MeO studies, Carl Deiseroth at Stanford has just done this with optogenetics in mice, but he's also done it with epileptic human patients. And he's done ketamine studies that create dissociative out-of-body experiences, realized that was 3 hertz at EEG in certain locations in the brain. So delta wave states, then gone back without the ketamine, neuroelectrically stimulated 3 hertz. And wouldn't you know it, they have the same dissociative out-of-body experience. The anesthesiologists at MIT have just done the same thing with nitrous oxide and realized, oh shit, for 3 to 12 minutes after inhalation of 50% oxygen nitrous oxide blend, you will drop into a double amplitude delta wave state, after which it normalizes and goes away, which was the seedbeds of William James's Varieties of Religious Experience, as well as Winston Churchill's Profound Reveries. And you're like, oh shit, okay, I think we've got this going. And then, oh, by the way, pulse your nervous system with energy. It could be AC, DC, it could be electrical, vibratory, acoustics, acoustic, sonic. It could be pain, it could be orgasm, just neurological stimulation through that system. Boom, hit it, send it. And then people spend as long as their neurophysiology can hold in that state of superordinate information richness, which is epiphanic, which, because it was so rare back in the day, some motherfucker would come down from the mountain and go, "Hey guys, hair on fire, tell you what, I'm going to found a religion." And everyone's like, "Okay, we'll take your word for it." Right. And so now we can actually, the virtualization of the psychedelic experience, those are the cheat codes. They fucking work. Go conduct the experiment. And because now it is simply an evidentiary protocol that's falsifiable, n equals 1, your mileage will vary, we can hold back from fetishizing, reifying, deifying the interior experience. So it basically turns 4,000 years of religiosity on its head. You're like, let the mystery stay the mystery, right? Let's just get there, see what's what. And so you can literally say, "Hey, human, if you want to conduct this protocol, here's how. Now, you can believe what you want to believe, right? You can believe what you want. You can skin this with whatever interpretive frameworks are congruent and true and helpful and culturally and personally relevant, appropriate, and applicable. You can have a theistic interpretation. You can meet the gods and angels of your pantheon. You can have an aesthetic orientation. You can say, "Wow, look at the fractal symmetries of my mind's eye." You can have an agnostic interpretation, like, "It's super fucking interesting, but I'm going to hold back on any definitive statements or full stops," right? So there's room for all of it, right? This is actually the neurophysiology of it, in which case the question then becomes, I think, the ultimate one, which is back to Hunter Thompson and the bats, which is, what on earth do we think is actually fucking going on out there? Right? What is this? What are our provisional, what is our provisional assessments and assumptions about the non-ordinary states of consciousness and the supraordinate amount of information that appears to be highly generative, massively creative, innovative? You look back to the Greeks, it's the Muses. You look to Buckminster Fuller, he called it the design realm. Irvin Laszlo called it the Akashic field or the A field, right? Plato called it the realm of ideal forms. It's been around forever, where people routinely say, that wasn't me. Super interesting, fully formed, totally badass thought. I've spent the next year or the rest of my career trying to track down and unpack. You're like, shouldn't we be actually checking that out? Because to me, that's so far up and above and beyond the specific mechanics of market-based pharmacological therapy, and infinitely more interesting, and gives us many, many more options and choices as to how to play, how to protect it, how to preserve it, how to translate it, how to transform it, and actually even how to potentially harness it, so that we can do all the good things that the psychedelic renaissance is predicated on, but we shouldn't get fixated on the specific mechanisms of action. It's almost a material reductionism, which is baffling given the fundamental nature of the psychedelic experience itself.